Imagine this scenario, because it is the ultimate American ritual. You are 27 years old. It is a Saturday in June. You are standing in a barn that has been converted into a rustic chic venue. String lights hanging from reclaimed wood beams that cost more to rent than your first car. Your fiancé is next to you. Your mother is crying. Everyone is telling you this is the best day of your life. And it feels like it. You danced. You cried during the vows. You watched your dad get emotional during the father-daughter dance. It was perfect. But 3 weeks later, you sit down to open the final invoice from the venue, and your stomach drops. The number staring back at you is $34,000. For one day, for 6 hours. That's more than a year of rent. That's a down payment on a house. That's 4 years of daycare. That's the difference between retiring at 55 and retiring at 65. And you paid it, smiling, because you were told this is what love looks like on paper. This is the wedding industrial complex. It is one of the only purchases in America where spending more is marketed as spending on love itself, where going into debt is framed as romantic, and where questioning the cost makes you the villain of your own engagement. You didn't buy a wedding, you bought a story, and the story cost you a decade of compound interest. My name is Bobby, and I spend way too much time thinking about the emotional lies that prevent us from optimizing our financial lives. If you are currently engaged and feeling pressure to spend more than you're comfortable with, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Today we are going to slaughter one of the most sacred cows in American culture. We are going to look at the manufactured tradition of the diamond ring, the psychological trap of the your day mentality, and the brutal opportunity cost. Here's the thing about the wedding industry. It doesn't sell weddings. It sells guilt. It sells the idea that the size of your celebration is a direct measurement of the size of your love. Anyone who scales back is somehow settling. This isn't an accident. It's a marketing strategy that was engineered, tested, and perfected over the better part of a century. Let's start with the diamond. Before the 1930s, diamond engagement rings weren't really a thing. A company called De Beers launched an advertising campaign in 1947 with 4 words: "A diamond is forever." 2 months' salary on a ring became the standard, a number De Beers invented and marketed until it became gospel. There is no law, no religious text, no ancient tradition that says you need to spend 2 months of income on a compressed piece of carbon. Now apply that same lens to the entire wedding. The average American wedding in 2025 costs somewhere between $30,000 and $35,000. Ask yourself, would you voluntarily set $30,000 on fire in your backyard? No, but frame it as a wedding, and suddenly it's not insanity. It's tradition. That's the trick. The industry didn't sell you a product. It sold you a psychological trap where spending less feels like loving less. Let's talk about arbitrage, because this is where it gets painful. Every dollar you spend on a single day is a dollar that will never compound again. Say a couple spends $30,000 on their wedding instead of $10,000. That's $20,000 of excess spending. If that $20,000 had gone into an S&P 500 index fund instead, in 30 years that money would be worth roughly $200,000. You didn't spend $20,000 on a better cake and a photo booth. You spent $200,000 of your retirement. The venue didn't charge you $34,000. It charged you $34,000 plus every dollar that money would have earned for the rest of your working life. Most couples define worth by how the day felt. I define worth by what the day cost you in future options. A wedding produces zero cash flow. It produces no equity. It evaporates in a single evening, leaving behind a photo album and, for 1 in 3 couples, a credit card balance. Couple A spends $30,000 on their wedding, financed partly through savings and partly through a wedding loan, at around 10% interest. By the time it's done, they've paid roughly $36,000 total. Couple B spends $8,000 on an intentionally small wedding, and invests the difference, $22,000, in a brokerage account the week after the wedding. 20 years later, Couple A has photos in a paid-off loan. Couple B has photos and roughly $102,000 sitting in an index fund. That's the entire down payment on their kid's first home, or the seed money for early retirement. Here's the part nobody wants to admit. This isn't really about weddings. It's about status signaling disguised as sentiment. A wedding is the most concentrated version of this phenomenon in existence. because the audience is literally sitting in chairs watching you do it. You're not just buying flowers, you're buying the validation of 150 people. The open bar isn't for you. It's so nobody says the wedding was cheap. You are financing other people's opinions of your relationship, and those people will forget the menu by Tuesday. Now, you might be thinking, Bobby, this is the one day of my life. I want to remember it. Do you remember the specific flowers at the last wedding you attended? Do you remember the appetizers? Most guests remember three things: whether the ceremony was emotional, whether the dance floor was fun, and whether they had a good time talking to people. None of those three things cost $30,000. There is one legitimate exception to all of this. If your family or your partner's family is genuinely paying for the wedding out of surplus wealth, spend it. The math only turns predatory when the money is coming out of your own future. That's not a celebration anymore. That's a wealth transfer from your 60-year-old self to a caterer. You have to stop viewing the size of your wedding as a measurement of the size of your love, and start viewing it as a single financial decision. The couples who actually build wealth together aren't the ones who threw the biggest party. They're the ones who made their first major financial decision as a unit, the wedding itself, an intentional one instead of an emotional one. So here's the actionable step. Before you book a single vendor, sit down and write two numbers on paper. Then take the gap between those two numbers and open a joint brokerage account. Call it your First House Fund or your Freedom Fund. 30,000 Australian dollars wedding is a beautiful memory. $250,000 in your 401k because you refuse to compete is a beautiful marriage. I'd rather walk into a marriage with an army of compounding capital than a highlight reel everyone forgets by next year. If this video made you rethink that venue deposit, share it with a friend who's currently drowning in wedding planning group chats. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.